So I'm Jo Nettleton. As Jennifer says, I'm Chief Regulator at the Environment Agency. I'm also a wife, a mother, a Yorkshire lass, which is why I suspect I was invited to give this lecture today. And I've got a long-ranging career across radiation protection. I'm absolutely honoured beyond belief to be invited to give the Dunster lecture, not only because it's in the name of such a giant as John Dunster, but also because I'm following in the footsteps of some truly great members of the radiation protection community. So thank you very much to the SRP for the invite. A little bit about myself then. As I say, a fairly long and varied career. I left university back in the last century at the end of the 80s and became a medical physicist, working in radiation protection, radiotherapy and nuclear medicine, and dabbling a little bit in radiation research. You can see the slide on your top right there is autoradiographed human sperm labelled with thallium, which I think of as my seminal work in radiation protection. In 1998, I joined the Health and Safety Executive, and I've basically been a regulator ever since, regulating across a whole range of industries using radiation, medical research, nuclear safeguards, and a range of other regulation as well, major hazardous chemicals and pathogens. I joined the Environment Agency in 2015, and as Jennifer says, about a year ago, I was delighted to be made our first ever Chief Regulator. And just to finish the story off, even more delighted that this April, the nuclear team across the Environment Agency joined me. So I head up our nuclear regulation team as well. So I think that gives me a reasonable perspective to give some thoughts on the future of radiation protection. Now, I know that actually I've done my homework. I've looked across the Dunster lectures that have been done in the past, and a number of those lectures have had similar titles, but they all took a really different take on the subject. And hopefully you'll find that my lecture today gives enough food for thought and is different enough from other colleagues who've given the similar title talk. I'm going to look through the lens of sustainability, collaboration and engagement, diversity and inclusion, and leadership. And I'm delighted that I will be joined on the stage by some colleagues for a small part of that the lecture. So, as I said, I did do my homework, and I scared myself, of course, by watching previous Dunster lectures. Is Pete Burgess in the room? Yay. So back in 2016, Pete, you will remember that you took on the really ambitious task of looking 50 years ahead. And I remember you've got a slide, and you talked about, look 50 years ahead. You never know, folks, what we might have come across. We might have had a pandemic. Global warming might be really hitting, might be a nuclear war, and let's hope that nuclear technology really finally takes off. And I imagine that there were a fair few cynical souls in the audience who sat there thinking, yeah, Pete, yeah, whatever. Anyway, forward 9 years, the world's gone chuffing mad, hasn't it? I haven't even picked here the most scary slides to put on this little demonstration. But if we go through Pete's list, pandemic, tick. Global warming, we are unfortunately seeing the catastrophic impact not only in this country, but played out across the globe. Nuclear war, well, no, but is anybody really comfortable about what's going on in Central Europe at the moment and other places? And more happily, we are definitely seeing that move forward in nuclear technology. So bringing it into the UK context a little bit, and I'm not going to read out the words of our glorious leaders, but just to summarise some of the thoughts of people at the top of the shop, Ed Miliband, our Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, talks about the war in Ukraine, he talks about the need for energy security, and he talks about the climate crisis. He also says, let's look for the opportunities in that. Let's look for let's not waste any crisis, let's grow, let's innovate, let's develop. Keir Starmer, he's talking about artificial intelligence. Now, I don't know about you, if any of you were sort of growing up as teenagers, young adults in the 1980s, 1990s, for me, if somebody says artificial intelligence, I'm thinking of a manic cyborg with red eyes walking around hunting down humanity with one strong woman to save the world. I'll be back. But actually, no, artificial intelligence is the technology that really has to save us. We need it. We need it at the heart of the growth and the development and innovation across energy, across healthcare, across food resilience. It's absolutely here to stay and develop. And Rachel Reeves, Treasurer. I don't know whether anybody's been asleep since the Labour government came into power, but if you haven't, you've probably noticed that they're quite keen on growth. And growth is at the heart of everything that the Labour government is designing at the moment. And I put it to you that radiation protection won't get the headlines, absolutely not, but radiation protection is going to be at the heart. We've got to get the radiation protection right if we want to meet the challenges that face us. If we're talking about energy, it's really great, isn't it? We are seeing so much progress in the world of energy at the moment, and nuclear energy. New fuels, new coolants, new reactor designs, advanced nuclear technology. Do we go for SMRs? Do we go for ANT? Do we go for gigawatt? We've even got fusion. It's nuclear, Jim, but not as we know it. But at the heart of that, we still need radiation protection in the design, in the operation, in the legacy and waste management, and God forbid, in the event of emergencies. So radiation protection absolutely is at the heart of all of that. In healthcare, similarly, we have new radionuclide therapies, we've got new radio tracers, we've got WISO imaging equipment. And again, we need radiation protection for patient safety, for public safety, and for the environmental protection. Absolutely at the heart of things. And of course, my old friend, artificial intelligence and robotics. What does radiation protection look like in a world of artificial intelligence? How do we build in radiation protection? That will be absolutely key. So there's plenty of science, there's plenty of stuff there to get our teeth into as a community. But actually, I'm not going to talk about the science. I'm going to talk about what I think we need to be as a community, how we need to be as a community of radiation protection professionals across the globe, across the UK, through SRP, to be able to meet those challenges ahead. And I'm going to look at that through some lenses: sustainability, collaboration and engagement, diversity, inclusion, and leadership. So I'll start with sustainability. Does everybody, or is there anybody who hasn't heard of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? Yay. So I think if we're talking about sustainability, these are a really good place to start. They're the building blocks, aren't they, of what a sustainable global community might look like. I think they are almost universally recognised as a good thing. And of course, they include things like good health and well-being, no poverty, no hunger, good education, opportunities for all, healthy life below water, healthy life on land. They're really important, aren't they? And the ICRP also thinks that they're important. It thinks that they're important enough for radiation protection that it set up a working party to look at the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, in relation to radiation protection. And I think what they've done for the hard of thinking like me is really pull out where radiation protection fits there. I don't think, you probably can't see all of that, but as examples, radiation protection in the environment really matters if you want healthy life in the water, if you want healthy life on land, if you want clean water and sanitation. Radiation protection in healthcare really matters if you want health and well-being for all. And there are some maybe slightly more surprising links there, but equally important, no poverty. Well, what does recovery from a radiological emergency look like then? And how do we do that in a way that really enables communities to survive and flourish? And I won't read the rest of them out, but I think where the ICRP is getting to is that if you cut radiation protection down the middle, like a stick of rock, it should say sustainability in the same way that rock will say Blackpool, if you bought it from Blackpool. And so my challenge to all of you is that as you're designing the new exciting radiation protection future, are you building sustainability into the heart of that? Are you thinking, is it sustainable? Are we taking the opportunities to make sure we do have that sustainable future? Moving on, collaboration. So the challenges facing us are really complex, aren't they? At a global level, at a national level, and at a local level. I think basically all the easy, simple problems have been solved, except potholes. But for those complex problems, we really need diverse minds to come up with solutions. And I think Fukushima and the learning that's gone on since Fukushima is a really, really good example of that. So again, I know I'm talking to a group of experts here, so just a quick recap. The Great East Japan earthquake in 2011 and the dreadful tsunami and catastrophic impacts that had included knocking the power out from the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. That resulted in a loss of cooling, so overheating, the fuel melted, vessel breach, hydrogen escape, hydrogen explosion, massive plume of radionuclide released. And of course, all the impacts that followed that played through. And again, I know there are colleagues in this room who are absolutely experts in that field. The lessons that have been learned globally and the amount of collaboration that's happened following that event, both to support Japan in trying to move forward and also to learn those lessons to prevent that happening again, are just incredible. I think, a real example of a set of examples of collaboration. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about the bit that I've been most involved with. I like to call it the little trouble that Fukushima has with water. So since 2011, TEPCO, the operator at Fukushima, have been collecting the groundwater on their site. And the groundwater on their site comes from the rain that's rained down, goes through the reactor buildings that are somewhat damaged, picks up a whole myriad of fission products, and so is really, really contaminated. So if you look at that slide up there, all those tanks, all those big blue tanks, they contain radioactively contaminated water. And I want you to commit that picture to your memories. The reactors themselves are just up in the top left of the picture. Rest of it's basically 1,000 tanks, 1.4 million cubic meters of radioactively contaminated water. The Japanese, TEPCO, the government of Japan, the nuclear regulator NRA, they have developed a solution to this. It's called the Advanced Liquid Processing System, ALPS. And basically, they're feeding sequentially the water through a set of filtration, ion exchange, adsorption, to remove all the radionuclides to a level that's below regulatory level for all but tritium. So the ALPS treated water does contain a large range of radionuclides, about 50 fission products, but the only one that's of regulatory interest is tritium. And what they're doing is they are diluting that with seawater and disposing of it into the marine environment in a controlled way, about a mile out from the shore of Fukushima. And they're doing that to a level of around 22 terabecquerels per year, and at the moment, tritium, and at the moment, it's planned to take about 30 years to release all those 1,000 tanks. And the water is continuing to be generated as well. Now, of course, that's actually the same sort of level that we discharge from plants around the world. But, of course, Fukushima is not any nuclear plant. And the amount of interest is, as you would imagine, quite significant, both locally. The fisheries, for example, are just beginning to get back to some semblance of normality, and the fishermen are not that thrilled at the thought of radioactive discharge going into the sea near Fukushima and doing for their reputation again. Clearly, the countries around Japan are interested, Southeast Pacific, China, Korea, Pacific Islands, and globally. We're all interested, aren't we, in everything that goes on at Fukushima. So the government of Japan asked the IAEA if the IAEA could find some way, please, to give some public, independent scrutiny and assurance around the disposals. So back in 2021, the Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, assembled a team of international experts. And that team is made up of 11 people from 11 different countries, myself from the UK, but from the Americas, from countries around Japan, Vietnam, Korea, China, Pacific Islands, Australia. So we all have really diverse views. And since 2021, we've been working really hard with TEPCO, with the nuclear regulator, with the Japanese government to examine the plans that are being put in place around the disposal of that water. And, you know, we're looking at the type of topics that you would expect: characterisation of the source, radiological environmental impact assessment, regulation of the site, involvement of parties, occupational radiological protection, the range of them. And we assessed those topics, and we worked with the Japanese, and we worked together to make improvement, or to suggest improvements, so that by the time they were ready to dispose or start dispose, their first discharge in 2023, we were able to say that the disposals were in line with the IAEA, the International Safety Standards. Now, what's really interesting from that is that we all, across the task force, had really diverse views. We had different things that we cared about, either because of our own particular areas of expertise or because of the way that our country thought of the safety standards and what implementing the safety standards is. And of course, politics was there too. And I think optimization is a really good example. So the Japanese psyche around this is it must be as low as possible. The amount that we discharge must be tiny. It doesn't matter if it takes 30 years. We want to be able to demonstrate to everybody that the amount we're disposing of is negligible. That's fine, isn't it? Except that, if you remember that picture a couple of slides back of those 1,000 tanks on site, if you're disposing of things so slowly, you're not clearing the space to be able to use it to assist with decommissioning the really hazardous stuff on site, i.e. those reactors. So I've been working to really try and persuade the Japanese to do some better optimization. That's something that I really care about, and also consider, you know, the approach they're taking to things. Before the task force got involved, the government of Japan didn't even have a dose constraint within their legislation. They do now, and one of the things that we're working with is, what does the next round of optimization look like? That was really important to me. Not everybody on the task force agreed, and we had some really, really challenging discussions about that. But we got to a position where we were able to give a robust advice to Japan. And I think that's it. The reflections across all of that, it is a long job, 30 years. DG Grossi says we'll be there until the last drop is disposed. Well, I'll be in my late 80s then, so I'm not sure I'm going to be there when the last drop is disposed, but hopefully it'll be sooner than that. Different approaches are really important. We have to work through the politics. We can't get away from that. Collaboration isn't the fastest way to sort something out, and it's not the simplest. It's messy, but it's the way that you're going to get the most robust solution to really complex problems. And that's just, I won't read that out, but that's the man himself, DG Raphael Grossi, saying it's safe, you know, basically, it's okay. And the disposals are, we're monitoring the disposals that are going into the environment, and everything is as it was predicted to be. So I think that's just an example of how difficult collaboration is, but how important collaboration is. Next topic that I'm going to talk about, well, actually I'm not going to talk about, is diversity and inclusion. So if I'm talking about the future of radiation protection, I don't necessarily think a 58-year-old woman is the best person to be talking about the future and what I see for the future. But I'm really pleased that I do have two colleagues with me on the floor today who are going to give you their views. Helen Whitehead, who's the outgoing chair of the Rising Generations Group, and Lisa Smith, who's the incoming chair of the Rising Generations Group, are just going to join me and say a few words. Thank you, ladies.
Well, thank you, Jo. So when Jo originally asked us for our input on this, myself and Helen sat down, and Jo had asked, what do we want RP to look like in 20 years' time? And when we discussed it, the main thing myself and Helen sort of instantly agreed on was diversity and inclusion, specifically for RP having a range of professionals. And you can see the statement there that sort of sums it up, having a range of professionals making up a sustainable workforce across a wide range of industries and careers as well. So the specific sort of individual sections that we were thinking about, so age is a big one. Ideally, we'd like RP as a profession to have people across a wide range of ages, and therefore people can bring a wide range of experience as well, and then that experience can be shared. Gender was a big one. As with a lot of other scientific areas, as we may know, RP is predominantly those that are male, but what we'd like is to have an increase in those that are female, but also those that identify as non-binary as well. It's something that's quite important, and it's important that RP as a profession is welcoming and including those. Ethnicity, again, is a big one. We'd like people across a range of cultures and ethnic backgrounds, and to make sure that RP is welcoming to all people from all backgrounds. Accessibility as well was another one of our focuses. So accessibility in terms of those with physical disabilities, but also with potential hidden disabilities as well. And jobs and careers. So we want RP to not just be including those that maybe work as an RPA, but also to include those careers that might not be directly what you think of when you think of RP, but those jobs and careers that do link in, and it's important that they are represented and feel that they can have an input as well. We identified quite a few challenges to this. A big one being, well, one that's quite relevant is geographical restrictions. For example, so I work in the nuclear industry, and as we know, they do tend to build nuclear sites away from cities, and that can be quite limiting for people that maybe need some of the infrastructure that cities provide. Occupational limitations. So again, that's linking back to sort of physical and hidden disabilities. It's making sure that RP and all of our employers make sure that reasonable adjustments are put in place to accommodate those. And also the skills gap is quite a big relevant topic at the moment. I think there's a session later on today relating to that, but again, it's something that is at the forefront of things at the moment.
Let's change the slide. Excuse me. It's the big arrow, ladies.
Oh, I thought it was a plate. I thought it was a plate. Okay, do you want me to go now? Yeah. Okay, now we've figured out how to change the slide. So in terms of kind of the rising generation group, so as Joe said, I'm the outgoing chair and Lisa is the incoming chair, which is great. And for those who maybe don't know, the rising generations group is for those within the first 10 years of their career. And the reason we don't put an age on it is because people can change careers at any point in their life. And we don't want to exclude people just because of age. So we're really proud that we have that as part of our group. In terms of kind of the EDI working group, so you will hear a little bit more on this in the session after the break. But the idea of this, again, is to start including people from all those different ethnic backgrounds, all the different, genders, ages, and thinking about those protected characteristics and making sure we're doing what we can for those who are part of SRP. Within the RGG, we do have a mentorship scheme. It is something that we would like to really start to push a little bit more for those who are maybe early on in their career, networking with those who are maybe further on in the career, can offer some support. And we also run events for those who want to network. It can be quite daunting being early on in a career and not really knowing people. So we really like to hold those events so you get to know the committee, you get to know each other, and it just makes coming to events like this as well a little bit more inclusive for you as well, because you might know somebody and you're not coming on your own. In terms of outreach, we like to be involved kind of from the RGG perspective as well, is because we really want to encourage and advertise radiation protection as a career for everyone. So, making sure, as Lisa said, that these geographic restrictions aren't there, that students, potential students coming through education go, oh, actually, I can do a job within radiation protection. I don't need to live near Sellafield. I don't need to live near Sizewell C. They can actually be involved in a variety of different reasons. So the Rising Generation group really helps to push that and to help include those from, the first 10 years of the career, but also that diversity that we have across SRP as well.
Thank you, Helen and Lisa. That was great. And I think it is really important that we listen to the voices of people who are not mature and from the same voice set that we sometimes get into the habit of listening to. So thank you very much. The last lens that I'm going to look through is leadership. Although you might argue that it's all been about leadership. But specifically, I'm going to talk about leadership as a focus. So we all agree, don't we, that radiation protection standards and application needs to be objective and evidence-based. And the question is, can we ignore the politics? I'm going to use the example, and I never get the words in the right order here. It's like Eric Morecambe playing his piano. IAEA Joint Convention on the safety of spent fuel and the safety, no, see, I've done it wrong now, haven't I? On the safety of spent fuel and radioactive waste management. You know what I mean? So, everybody, that is a really important convention with about 70 countries signed up to it. And we all basically commit to follow the IAEA international safety standards in how we manage our spent nuclear fuel and our radioactive waste. Every 3 years, we then examine each other as countries across the convention. So that means that there is a report produced across each of the contracting parties, each of the countries, and that takes a lot of work from a lot of people. So in the UK, ONR, the Environment Agency, the UK government, devolved governments, devolved regulators, Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. Apologies if I've forgotten of anybody, but it is a really big piece of work, and thanks to everybody who contributes. And then once we've pulled that report together that says how we comply with the standards, we peer review each other's report, we peer review each other's, we mark each other's homework. And then we all get together in a joint convention meeting every 3 years. And what happens is that the senior people from the country's radiation protection organisations stand up and present a summary of the report and how we comply with the terms of the convention. And then we're examined by our peers in public, in debate. So for the UK, that is Mark Foy, who's the Chief Nuclear Inspector, myself, and a colleague, Clive Nixon, who's a senior colleague at the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. We stand up there and we expose ourselves metaphorically, and we have a really good discussion. Now, I think being that open and as countries putting ourselves out there, sharing what we do, taking the challenge, learning from each other, taking on learning from other countries and sharing our learning with other countries, I think that's leadership. I think that's how we need to be as radiation protection community. We need to be willing to be challenged and to have that debate and to learn from each other. This particular convention, though, there was another element that played into it. So Ukraine and Russia are both contracting parties to the convention. And in their report, Russia had included parts of Ukraine that they'd invaded, Zaporizhzhia, for example. And a number of countries, the UK included, decided that as delegations, we needed to actually put a marker in the sand, that this was not okay. So we actually made a representation, a written representation to the convention that we felt that this was not okay, this was not right. And I'm really pleased that a number of countries together persuaded the convention that this is now actually included as part of the formal record of the convention, that this is not okay. Now, I think that's leadership as well. I think not sitting with our head in the sand and pretending that stuff isn't happening around us is really necessary as we move ahead. And actually, on that note, I'm going to end with a question. So what is our role, everybody? What is our role as individuals? What is our role as institutions, whether you're business, research, hospitals, government, regulators, ICRP, Society for Radiological Protection? What is all of our roles in a world where the old rules don't apply anymore? Thank you.
Thank you very much.